Cheers, everybody, and welcome to your favorite late night Friday hashcast. Here with your hosts, Superior Buds, Pedro's Grow Room, and it's me, Fergoli, and of course, our esteemed guest for Ep.8 is VaderOG. Very, very excited to have Vader here and back on a live stream. Just beautiful. Vader is the owner of Ocean Grown Genetics, someone that has been educating us and championing breeding in the cannabis industry, and especially here on YouTube for well over a decade. I think I saw your oldest video is over 12 years old now. Just inching so close to that 100,000 subscribers, and someone that has really been here to support all of us that have been in the YouTube community for quite some time. VaderOG, welcome to Variables, and let everybody know, where can we find you nowadays?
Thanks for having me. It's good to see everybody. It's been a minute. For sure. Yeah, I guess it's been going on a while. I know. I think it's like 2011 is when I started the YouTube stuff. But too kind in most of that. I don't know. I'm just a person floating here through the ether with the rest of you. We're all doing our thing. Yeah, and there's still YouTube and whatnot, but all the platforms and everything really just, right, we all know, like, cut down on so much stuff. And I'd always been kind of doing side stuff in film and television. So over the years, that has just really like pulled me back and been dealing with that a lot. So Ocean Grown is still cruising along. I drop some videos from time to time, but sometimes I've had some projects and things going on, so I haven't been able to keep things going as far as like flowering stuff or whatever. Of course, keep all the moms and everything going, right? Like cruising, but yeah, mostly just kind of in and out of that, playing around with some new stuff. We have our Discord, so you can check out the Discord and the YouTube channel. YouTube's still VaderOG. Discord is Ocean Grown Seeds. I don't know if I have a link for that. And then like Instagram and that, but again, I haven't been uploading over there. And same with YouTube, like so many strikes over the years. I'm blown away that my channels weren't taken down. I got a couple of like strong worded warnings from them about it, and was like, okay, fine, we'll just let it chill for a little bit, and then just trying to like keep an eye on it. And if the platforms seem like they open up, change some policies, then it would be wonderful to get back to like putting out content. I think as far as like education and things go, for me, it was always like, hey, I didn't dive too much into like trying to do master classes or whatnot. Thought about it several times over the years, or doing something like that. But to me, it was more of like, I enjoy just documenting what I'm doing, and kind of then people ask questions and I get to interact, right, with the community and everything like that. So that was more the approach I took. And as everything just kind of really kind of hampered down so much, and I just kind of stepped back from that. Not the first time. I mean, I think during the 2000s with forums and things, like, very similar kind of stuff happened, especially locally. Like we all deal with local regulation. We're all involved in business locally and things, and stuff goes up and down. Sometimes stuff's totally open for years. Sometimes it's down. But like right now, a lot of stuff is kind of down. Like we had a lot of legalization as far as rec goes, but we've also had a lot of that sort of cut off. Like the city, like I moved back down south, and now like not outside of LA, and our city was like, there's like 20 permits available. So there's like 20 really big places, and they won't even let anybody doing less than $1 million a month, like just like run and operate. So that kind of stuff. And I didn't stand up and like fight it too bad. We tried to get into some things, but other than that, we're good on our property, we're good on our stuff, and we're just kind of hanging out for the most part. I don't know. That might have been a little bit of a ramble about where
no, it gives us so much to talk about, man. And one of the first things you brought up, and I'm just going to dive right into it, is your production, man. I gotta say, VaderOG has one of the most well-produced channels and well-produced content videos here on YouTube in the cannabis industry, and something that I think to this day is unmatched. I mean, we're talking everything from well-written and voiced, voiceover scripts, the level of production of the cuts of the point of view, the production value of the cameras he's buying, and
the B-roll is insane. Yeah,
definitely been something that I've tried to achieve over the years and just give it up because, like, my God, dude, can't keep up with that.
I mean, I typically take the meta crapper approach where it's like, all right, turn on the camera and start talking, because that post the editing and post, like there's so much that goes into it. Not only is it like really expensive software and all the production equipment that goes into it, not let alone the cameras and everything that you're using, but the time. I mean, it's like one thing to, all right, put basically like, either it's like a really important hobby or like your life's work into your grow, right? And then all that time you spend there making sure everything's perfect, to then go in there with a camera and show the world about it, and then also spend probably 4 to 10 times the amount of time it takes to film it, to actually edit it and put it together and then upload it on YouTube. I just gotta say, Vader, thank you, because you have inspired me and many others out there to just not only put ourselves and our content out there, but to put just a little bit more effort in there, because like
raise the bar.
Yeah, you are this bar that is set, and I don't think it's matched yet. But I say all that because
I think there's some pretty great people out there doing stuff, and you guys do really great work too. So I would not pull that down. I appreciate it though, for making me blush.
Well, you deserve all the praise, because you've shown it, man. And I just, it's just unmatched, man. It's just unmatched. So
even going back to 10-year-old videos and looking at them now, you're still above what most content is today. It's crazy to think that you've just been at that level for so long.
But you talked and you brought up how you've now kind of gone back into that. Like, tell us where. This is what I want to know. Where does that skill set come from? Because this isn't just VaderOG sitting in this sweet studio that he's in right now and spending a couple extra hours a night, putting together footage.
Yeah.
You've got a skill set, man.
This is definitely something obtained over the years, for sure.
Yeah, and it sounds like, from what you said, you're putting it to use outside the cannabis industry too. So where does this all come from?
I think overall, for a long time, and when I was growing up, I loved the idea of getting into like film and doing movies and things like that. So it was always kind of there, but lived a life, like had jobs, did things, right? Tried out different stuff. Cannabis came around because, medical and stuff like that for me. And I found it, really enjoyed it. So it was like, yeah, it was just like a hobby going along with it. But due to everything else, as far as like growing, I got into it extra deep, and I had the availability. I was lucky. I lived in California, in Cali. Like, they had opened up in a way that a lot of places hadn't, clones, trading, all kinds of stuff, right? Just so localized. Same with OGs and the whole story behind everything. Like, it's just, I was in the right place at the right time for sure. While at the same time, I was big on the internet, and when I say on the internet, I wasn't big like myself. I mean, like, I was big into it. And forums and things like that. That's how you could learn about stuff. That's how you could socialize with other people, because it was so hush hush. You're talking about the early 2000s. And so along with that, like, yeah, I like doing film and stuff and always wanted to, but I was some broke kid who came out of being broke in a trailer park and joining the military and then trying to find a life for myself. I didn't have the expensive equipment or photography stuff and all of that. And I totally empathize with people who are young, or new into anything, and it's like trying to invest in that kind of stuff, right? Can get out of control really fast, and especially
really
nowadays.
fast.
Nowadays, I think that we all have a pressure on us to like dive into that kind of material or that kind of equipment, things like that. Same thing with growing, right? Like, to get the best of the best lights, or what is that? Like, what is the best thing for you? So in the beginning, I was just really into forums. I wanted to take better pictures, and so it happened to be like, over the years, I got a digital camera. I was taking pictures for forums, and then the D90, Nikon D90 came out, and that was the first camera that had HD, like 720. They had locked the not the ISO, but the shutter speed rate, so it looked kind of weird. It was supposed to be prized as like, ooh, the new digital format. But when it came to video, the pictures were great, and I love to use it. But the video ended up always never really being that great. Some of the early videos on YouTube are with that camera. And
this is a DSLR, right?
This is a DSLR, but it was the first one. If I had just really done my research, my due diligence a little bit, in a few months, I think it was like 6 months later, Canon released the 5D Mark II. And that blew everything out of the water. That went to HD 1080.
Yeah,
that went to full control in your shutter speed. In the video shutter speed for the Nikon D90, there was no actual adjustment you could make. It was just automatic all the time. You could adjust ISO and things, but you couldn't do that. And so it always had a particular look. Nowadays, I think it's actually a really weird look that can be used, right? You can use it as a particular vintage look, especially a DSLR vintage look. So you can get creative with it. But back then, I was pretty disappointed in myself. But I'd spent a lot of money. It was like $1,500. Like, holy fucking shit. Like, no
Was that
way.
just the body too?
Yeah, that was just the body. Or maybe I think it came with a lens and a printer. I think it came with an
Lens,
Epson
right.
printer.
35
Give you a free printer and then, you know, $1 million.
Yeah, that's still
Classic.
up there. That's still pretty
Classic
expensive
tale.
back in the day.
Yeah.
No, for
Well,
sure.
nowadays,
So,
though, people have the benefits. I mean, the iPhones and the Samsungs, their cameras now are insane.
no, I mean, and I even use, like you say, like, oh, like my production quality. Sometimes I'm using an iPhone for certain shots or things just because it's easier to slide that in against the wall to get something, etc. Like, you just can't do it. And especially with the newer iPhones and things, like, for sure. And for Android, all kinds of stuff, like, right, Samsung, there's also some really great cameras and setups for that stuff too. And then with all the extra apps, you can like actually manually adjust so much stuff now in ways that you couldn't even with the earlier phones.
Well, yeah, a lot of it is in the software, the processing of the pixels you captured. You know what I mean? It's like, it's incredible what that you can do with that alone. I mean, it's certainly helps to have a good lens, especially when we're doing like optic zoom versus digital zoom. That one kills me. that's still so far behind.
Like you said, honestly, with the cameras that we have right now anymore, the quality that we have, as long as you can edit it together, you know, not necessarily edit the video, but just clip it together, you know, you're going to do all right. So what I don't want at this point in time is for people that are out there that want to get in this to be like, oh my God, I got to spend $1,500 on a body. I got to spend this on a camera. No, take your fucking camera, record some shit, splice it together, upload it. You're going to get some followers. Keep going. Let them just keep going. Keep going.
And that's the point, like with the D90, is that I kind of set myself back where I had a great camera for taking pictures, but for doing video, it actually really wasn't that great comparatively to all the other people who invested 6 months later the same amount, and suddenly they had something at least twice as good when it came to video and stuff. And I felt like kind of down about it, but I kept putting out videos and I kept doing stuff, kept building myself up. Same with growing. I built up over the years, had things on and off throughout it. And that was the thing about the camera, was that YouTube was around in the 2000s when I had bought the camera originally. Because when I started the channel, that was the camera I had, and I hadn't invested in any other video cameras. And I wasn't thinking about investing in video. I cared much more about taking pictures. The same way in the 2000s, I did breed, and I messed around with strains and other people in the community, from Swerve to whoever, right? Like, I had been around, was inspired by that kind of stuff, running our dispensary, and we had People's Nursery Care. That was the clone place.
And thinking about, real quick, sorry to interrupt, but thinking about like the phones at the time, just because the fact that we can pretty much do almost anything with these nowadays, the phones at the time were like the BlackBerry, kind of dominated the market. There's the Nokia Nextel, like we're not talking iPhones with 3 lenses or anything like that. Like that just really wasn't an option.
Oh,
And
yeah,
in terms of,
especially,
yeah, in terms of like digital, even recording digital,
Don't be
it's
shitting
still
on
on
my
a tape.
Palm 3.
Oh, and back then
was the bomb, bro.
YouTube itself forever was 480, like for the first years.
Yeah,
and
good
then it
point.
went 720 and then 1080. And that's when, I think when they flipped to 1080 was like 2011 or 2010. And that's when I was like, oh, maybe I should put some videos out, because I was on the forums and I like been doing pictures. But I was like, maybe I can make some tutorial videos or for friends and people on the forums. Like, that's really how it snowballed. YouTube wasn't the way it is now at all. There was no idea. I mean, there were some people who built up big followings and were making money, but the idea of making money or monetizing, no, we're talking well before this.
Okay.
He's like Gen 2 on that time period of YouTube.
Fair enough.
I mean,
Who was there? Who was there?
Subcool was there, but like, if you go back and look at those old video views and stuff, like they're a lot more now because people have watched them over the years. But even then, like those, if you had 10,000 followers, it was like crazy. I think the biggest person was someone who was like Dutch, and he had like 80,000 followers, and he was just smoking bowls. And I knew someone else that had like 30,000 followers doing Widowmaker bowl smoking, and mostly that's where it was. Anyone growing was far less than that.
Yeah.
But it was huge to us. It was like, and it's still, and those are big followings. I think it's good not to be lost in the numbers. But yeah, when I first started, that's all it was. And but as more I started doing YouTube, I wanted to be creative. I was always in the idea of like wanting to make movies and write scripts and do things. So on the backside, kind of as a hobby, I was doing that, while also kind of hobbying around, messing with cannabis and at least producing content. And that's when, after a couple of years of that, like 2014, I decided that I was like going to go to film school. It was like I wanted to actually go to film school. There was a local enough college. I had to drive a couple hours to it. That was in between LA and San Diego, because I was living in San Diego at the time. So I went up there and I'd drive 2 hours up there, do 10-hour work days and drive 2 hours back, and then work in the garden at night and do that 5 days a week. And then plus, you have your weekends. So that's kind of where I scraped it. But I spent a couple of years doing that, between 2012, and 2014, until about that time when things really started to take off. High times, all kinds of stuff, right? Seats, this is where a lot of us started to be able to find each other, do that during that time period. So before that, spent a year or two, kind of messing with YouTube, got interested, went to film school, learned that film school, by the way, anybody who wants to go to film school, great. It's going to be good, but they don't teach you the technical skills really that much there. It's all about business. It's all about permits. It's all about how the business works, right? How production works, producers work, what's the workflow. It's all about that kind of stuff and working with teams. They don't really get
into
valuable,
but
that's
not really if
interesting.
you're running a camera. You know what I mean? So where do you learn that? YouTube? Where do you have to go? Just
you
practice?
learn it by being on projects with people and everyone experimenting. So it's kind of this throw you into the deep end and you just do it.
Same.
I was deep ending myself by being on YouTube. So I had already been able. So I was able to build my skills along the way and do it. But it's just an interesting thing because I don't think that the way I film or do whatnot and edit and everything was really, I think that YouTube itself and doing cannabis built me up more for what helped me with my career in film and television than the other way around, where film and television things fueled how I look at it as art and the way I edit, the way I like to produce content, and the way I then like to interact with the community itself, right? Your own community. We all do, with comment sections and everybody out there and everybody listening. And I myself am a fan of other people and stuff too, right? So I'm going to absorb myself in other people's stuff, whether they're in cannabis or other things, and be inspired by that. So a lot of things, I would say YouTube itself and having the availability of the platforms was a bigger inspiration in the direction I ended up taking. And then of course getting into cameras and doing things like that. So
yeah, the market does kind of dictate your direction, you know what I mean, to a certain extent. Was there ever a point where you wanted to change direction for some reason on your production? But for example, I bought a drone 7 years ago, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I'm making drone videos, but then it's how do I incorporate this into my grow? Unless I'm doing an outdoor grow or I find some commercial facility that could actually handle a drone flying through it, there's not really a whole lot I could do with that in the cannabis industry. So was there anything that?
You don't run the drone, but it's still a nice gimbal. So you just hold it in there.
It really is.
You're just holding it yourself. You are the drone.
It's so true. It's so true, man.
I don't know, maybe being creative with things like that, but I've thought about over the years. With film school anyways, a big thing was the connections. You learn about all the technical stuff, and then you're put on projects. You go through Film 2 programs and things, and then you make connections, and then you work for free for years and years. You work for free, and then they start paying you a little bit of money, and then before you know it, you can set a day rate and you can make your way in, and you have enough. But though the way that I would say getting into YouTube stuff, I was always pretty much just set with the cannabis stuff. And although I thought about venturing off maybe into other production stuff, I just kind of concentrated on it. I only had so much time. I think we all do, right? Everything takes so much time. And if you're really going to be into stuff, you maybe have a few burners. You can do cannabis and the production and kind of merge those together and then have your outside thing. But every time I went to think about bridging off into something else too much, it was I just didn't have the time. It's hard enough to find the time for everything here.
Mm-hmm. Is honestly so I'm curious, is there, I was gonna say, from the moment you click the record button, so to speak, on a camera to the time you click publish, but if you're me, I'm probably make sure my floors are clean, make sure the fans are all on, the lights are at the right settings, and my my HVAC is good to show it all. Yeah, I might check the grow a little bit before I just turn on the camera. But there's a lot that goes into it from the start to finish, and I'm curious to know maybe for every, if you can give us sort of a ratio, maybe for every like minute of published footage you put out there, how long do you think, or like how much effort or how like total time does it take for every like minute of video? Because I'm thinking it's got to be like hours per minute, right?
For sure. I think when it depends on the workflow and what's going on and what kind of videos I'm producing, do a daily series and just jump in there and do a 3-minute video every day, right?
Mhm.
Just to check in on the garden, like when I was doing a series like that, for example. You get into the flow where some of the days and things are a little bit quicker. Go in there, take some shots, not so bad. Go into the editing, you're good with it. I mean, definitely a 10x regardless for everything, and that's when things are going well. If you're trying to like
Yeah.
do scripted stuff, if you're trying to put things together, one of the things like where it's like I did skits like our Vader characters and things where I'd shoot myself and try and do like
You know,
a little
props
bit,
and costumes and
yeah, props and costumes a little bit more, and that's the stuff I really love to do, and I wanted to do more and more, but it took so much time, insane amount of time. For like afterwards, it just looks so easy. Like even to myself, I look at it and I watch it, and I'm like, that doesn't look that hard. But all this took up so much time. But I think it's the same way that like I'm sure we all mismanage our own time idea about like I'm gonna go into the garden and I'm just gonna trim up this stuff. Just gonna take off a few leaves. Yeah, I'll be done in 45 minutes. You know, to your significant partner or whoever, and like 3 hours later, you're just like,
Yep.
oh, I'm not even halfway through what I thought I was gonna get done.
Great fun for your OCD and your ADHD. Great fun.
So for time, it's like, yeah, it's tough. It does take a lot of time and effort to go through that. You try and pair it with the fact that you're in there doing stuff anyways. You get better about setting up cameras, doing whatever. I think at the beginning it can be very daunting and it take a lot of time. And then you end up getting back into the editing room. The shots don't look the way you thought they did. They look good on that little screen, but once you kind of get it up into the 1080 or 4K, you're like, oh shoot, that doesn't look that great. That's blurry. That's the worst. When things
Yeah,
are blurry.
once I learned how long editing took, I just decided on a 24-hour live stream. Just
Yeah.
like
Let it
I don't
run.
have to edit shit.
I think that was genius. That was a smart decision.
Let's jump from the production for a second and jump over to the breeding. Ocean Grown still alive and well?
Yeah, absolutely. We're still doing great. I mean, that's one of those things where, like, regardless of any business, I love to grow weed. I love to smoke weed. So I'm going to keep producing my own stuff for myself. And since I got into breeding, it's just like a secondhand nature thing for me to want to experiment with a new strain that like you end up making and getting together with and finding something good, find a good phenotype, want to bridge that against something else you've had in the past. And especially when it's not like, you know, over the last few years, I've kind of been able to kind of step back a little bit, not worry about timing. Like when you're trying to produce a lot of product all the time, you want to keep things fresh. You want to get things like timed up versus like sometimes it's nice to be able to step back and go, well, not really a big deal if these seeds are 5 years or 10 years old. We'll see what we pop. We'll see what we get. I feel like I've been able to kind of lean back into that a little bit more, take a little chiller pace. At the same time, try and keep up enough, keep, you know, within a 2-year period for any seeds that we breed, keep that on the shelf. If things get over than that, we just pull it from the shelf. Sometimes like, so I might have things, but I'm just like, it's just part of the way that I like to make sure that people get viable product, right? That he doesn't go off too much.
Mhm.
Even though seeds can definitely last a good 5 years, and plenty of companies and people do things like that. Just set parameters, and
Well,
that's just what we operate on. So
that is good to know because I do have
I
a
was
handful I haven't popped yet.
literally just going to say the same thing. My cabinet's stacked back here, so that's a good thing you're freaking here.
yeah, no, I mean, I think most seeds last a good 5 to 10 years without it being too crazy, right? You know, you're going to start seeing those diminishing returns after 4 or 5 years, depending on the strain, depending on the environment. But even just different strains are different. Even for me, I think I do a pretty decent job in the vault, keeping everything right. The cellar style, everything's very uniform. We got everything right, but some things just, I don't know, don't make it out as much. But we
what
try and
is
keep
your
things
style?
fresh, so I have been keeping up with that.
You said our style, like you know, make sure we're keeping our style. What is the ocean grown genetics or ocean grown seed style?
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, or like maybe I was just sort of riff-raffing a little bit.
All right,
What
put it this way.
specifically do you mean style?
Like if I was you know, what would draw me to OG versus, you know, any other breeder on the market? Because I'm sure, as you know, and all of us do, it's a lot more competitive nowadays than it maybe has been in the past, just because more people grow, right? And with more people growing comes more people doing everything, whether it's hash production, it's seed production, it's, commercial growing. What's going to bring me to ocean grown?
Yeah, if we want to talk about style, I have the same style I've had the whole time, which is that I do what I do for me in my way. I do it based on what I run into and what I think at the time is tastes good and that I want to keep going with. Maybe grows good, all those different parameters. So if it comes down to like a style, I think and I like to believe that in the gear itself, in when you grow it out, you get the feeling of that particular style in it. I definitely have an affinity for doing regular true breeds, for example. Don't really get into femmes and stuff too much, even though I started off breeding femmes. That's how I started to breed in the very beginning, because I wanted to put GDP and OG together and there were no males. So that's what you had to do if you wanted to slam those flavors together faster. But it wasn't about production. Over the years, though, a combination for production, I think it worked well, but also just the hybridization of having true breed seeds just really spoke to me. And so I've continued doing that. And so if you were to pick up some ocean grown gear and you grow that gear out, you're going to find similar flavors, similar styles in those things. Maybe it leans that way with OGs or whatnot, right? For example. And everybody's going to have their own style. So the same as it was like back in the 2000s, how getting an OG for me isn't going to be exactly the same as getting an OG for someone else, especially over the years as we breed. I try and keep things pretty traditional. I try and, rely on the fact that I have traditional mom and OGs, old school ones that I know I can reference. And then that way when I'm diving into new strains and it's like, okay, well, is this deserving of an OG on the back end or a perps or, is this how close to cookies or something is it? Right. Those things, but everybody's stuff is going to come out, in their own way. And competition, of course, like there's so much more of a wider market. And I think that's awesome. I think it's great that it's not just Cali, right? There's all these different people in all these different environments. And I'm a big proponent that that's the way it should be, because people are going to naturally, inherently just find different traits that work better in different environments, whether you're indoors or outdoors. Just still being, where Superior is and doing indoor growing is going to be vastly different than SoCal where I am. For example, right? We're still going to be able to make different decisions. And I would make probably slightly different decisions if I were in a different environment, even though I'm the one making those decisions. Now you start saying you've got different people who have different interests. Then of course it's going to vary. And I think the variety is good. That's what we need. We need lots of more variety. So
we love our variables.
I was just going to say.
I remember so last week, actually a couple times over the last few weeks, we've talked about a lung room, and you were one of the first people I remember learning about a lung room from Vader. I think Superior is currently operating with a lung room. Just curious to know if you are, Vader, and if you utilize that method or if you've got something else going on. I know your most recent video was actually an outdoor breeding run, I think seed to harvest from last season, I think, but you've had a few videos kind of in the mix since. Just curious to know if that's kind of how you're operating your HVAC.
Yeah, for our rooms, because we do the breeding and I want to keep negative pressure going through even the smaller rooms and pull air through, then we have an outer room that is like our hallway / open room that's on the outside that I basically use as a lung room. So it's not its own separate lung closet room, which definitely can be done. And depending on, that's the thing. It depends on the system flow, the environment that you're working with. Then you're going to make the adjustments to get the parameters that you want to get, your relative humidities, your temperatures, the cleanliness of stacking filters and things like that, depending on where you are, is going to make differences. When we're breeding, sometimes we want to stack filters in different ways and have our outputs in certain places just so we don't have contamination. And that's going to be more of a factor. But for the most part, because I am in a hot and dry environment, we do keep a cycling going through a separate room. But we have to pull in. If we're not using CO2, then we have to be able to pull from outside as well. So I pull and dump into a lung room that's a clean aired, and then that clean air goes into the rooms. So it's kind of a secondary phase system.
Like to precondition the air?
Yes. And then that way it helps with the conditioning inside of the room as well. So it doesn't pull as much. And I've just found that through power and everything like that, that actually helps to kind of precondition it down.
Yeah. Yeah, we had some interesting discussions last week about all of that with my lung room and reheat and heaters and AC and all the crazy stuff.
Dehues or lack thereof.
Oh, once you start dropping in dehues that are dumping a bunch of extra heat in there, and like, oh yeah, everything just stacks.
How important are terpenes to you when it comes to what you're breeding for? Because for me, as a primarily an extract guy, but again, someone that's like you, really like doing what I do for myself, and if it happens to help other people or be what other people are looking for, then that's awesome. But like I started doing this for myself, you know what I mean? How much of that translates, I guess, for you? And do you do you continue to search for different terpenes? Are you kind of locked into the terpenes you like? Is that even a factor in what you're breeding for?
I am definitely more take a hippie approach, and still do. I'd call it. It's about the flavor. I absolutely like flavor is still a top-notch thing. It's great to nerd out about particular compounds, terpenes, cannabinoids. Like, it's good to know about those things and be able to reference them in your information, in your, like, if you're using sheets or things like that, and you're logging and data logging. So for data, it's really great to be able to use that, go back, remember things, which is why I try and like do little basically journaling and diaries. Some years are far more detailed with sheets and all kinds of data things, and we're taking it, getting tested, all of that. And then other times, other years, like, it just kind of slips along the wayside, and I'm not paying to have everything checked, and I'm not versioning out. So regardless of how much data collection I'm doing, just the flavor itself is the most important thing in my selection and what I keep and how well it grows. So for that, it's just the same way that for a long time, or in the beginning, I would say commercial viability, how well something is going to do commercially for other people was an important thing for me, and my friends and everybody and us growing business associates kind of things. But, in the end, I think over time now it's less about the structure to me. It's just more about finding like unique traits. And as far as flavors go, it's probably one of the top-notch things for me, because that's what we're tasting, that's what we're doing.
It's
even
a big
though
part of the experience.
yeah, even though I'm not big on like I mean, I love extracts. It's not as much of a thing. I do love flower, and that's just something I'm comfortable with doing. So traditional kind of like bong loads is my thing, and I've wandered off away from it before, and then I always just find myself that's where my comfort zone is.
We all have our center.
yeah, our center. So that's
No,
just
that's
kind of
funny.
where I end up centering out a little bit more.
Well,
But yeah,
I've
hunting down
been
specific
washing
terpenes.
all the strains, so
I'll be right back, but I'm gonna ask the question before I step away for a second. What is your least favorite trait that you see when it comes to like breeding? Like maybe you've got this big pheno hunt of like all these seeds that you just grew, and for example, maybe you got 60 plants there. What is like the one or two different traits that you're gonna see that just immediately is like, just chuck it, just toss it, I don't want to deal with it, I'll be right back.
Negative traits. I don't know. I don't know if there's anything specific, which sounds like maybe a cop out. But because I've definitely like gone down passive things that I thought were bad, almost on purpose, just to see how bad it would get, like a genetic mutation or something. It can be in a structure, and same with flowers. I have things that I love, but I also like we have things that like we purposely stick around because it's horrible, it's putrid, and it's funny to pull that jar out and to be like, here, try this.
Flip it around for the beginner breeder. Obvious things that you would look for or want to look for potentially.
Always been a big proponent of health. So my advice always when it comes to when you're first going in on stuff is to get stuff that you're going to be successful with. So learn about how to breed healthy plants that follow in the traits and everything you want, but have the particular health and strength, vigor, to get from popping seeds all the way to your harvest without too much finickiness. I think that's one of the things. Now, people are welcome to challenge themselves, and you don't have to take that advice like 100%. Different people are going to have a different way that they're going to want to go about it.
Absolutely.
And I also don't think that's a problem. But I generally just, for friends and people who have been interested, and when they come to me, I find that I myself had the most success, and I find other people have success when they start with a good foundation and are able to then build upon that foundation and then start to experiment with the variables that are more extreme on your bell curve, the farther out you get on that gradient.
I definitely think there's less of a right or wrong and more of a preference, when it comes to the breeding side of things, Tommy. For instance, I wouldn't breed for anything that wouldn't wash well for me, because I'm a concentrate
That makes
guy.
a lot of
I'm a
sense.
hash
Yeah,
rosin guy.
absolutely.
I don't smoke flower like at all. So, the differences are great, in those instances.
And that's a great point, where if people came to me and someone was just interested in growing and wanted to ask about particular strains from me and said, oh, which ones are you really specifically are good for washing? It's like, well, I know that community has had great experience and good experiences with things like Alien Rift, right? Good
Right.
washer, great. But it wasn't specifically bred for that particularly. But if I knew that my friend, like Pedro, is like actually doing some breeding for that, I will hand that, hey, you should go check out Pedro though, because it sounds like that's going to line up a lot more
Sure.
with you, and you should connect
Yeah.
yourself with people. So if you're interested in certain kinds of breeding, then you should seek out people who are within the same realm as well. I think that can be really helpful.
And obviously, pheno hunts are, play a big role in that as well. I tried for a little while to try to get a pheno from dark plasma that would wash. I just couldn't get it to wash. But yeah, pheno hunting comes into play big time there.
No, 100%. And that's back to the
Yeah.
breeding thing, though. It's always a roll of the dice. And none of this is going to be, there are so many traits, genetics are so varied that you're constantly going in there playing D&D, right? Like you're constantly giving like multi-dice rolls and figuring out, you're going to get better about, putting yourself in certain positions. But other than that, I think the really cool thing about breeding is that, again, there's no right or wrong way, and that it's really about the journey. Like, and so my encouragement is to enjoy the journey of breeding, just like enjoying the journey of growing or pheno hunting.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's obvious, but I think it's important to point out that pheno hunting is not the same as receiving a cut, as same as receiving a clone of something. Like I said, I think that seems obvious, but it may not be for everybody that's out here listening. So the breeding, is trying to get genetically what you want to show up prominently in that pheno hunting process. It's not what you're going to get every time. Absolutely not. You're going to get variations of that. But the pheno hunting is kind of where the fun comes in, because then you get to kind of play off of what the breeder intended you to find.
Right.
Or maybe the intention was variety too, right? Couldn't that be a reason to breed?
Absolutely. I think 100% that there are some strains that I purposely actually just keep hybridizing, right? You just keep trying to move farther away. Oh, good, I got a Maui now, and we got some OG. Like, let's slam that together and then start looking again, right? That's going to have way more variety in itself. And then there are other things that I'm going to specifically then cut down every breed generation, depending on whether you're doing filial breeding or inbreeding. You're going to be able to work your way towards different traits. I think a really great example, like especially nowadays, it's like the idea with AI and things like that. I don't know if people are like, anybody's like been experimenting with that. It's something I've been experimenting a lot over the years and getting into AI art. And like it started because Adobe and other things were adding in little things like into their original stuff for generative fill for photos.
Every
like that.
patch has an AI update with
Yeah,
Adobe. It's
right.
amazing.
Yeah. So, but you get into open source stuff like Stable Diffusion, and you start like learning about like, hey, how do these generative models work, right? Like, how is this stuff going? What is noise? What does this mean? And it's actually really similar. It's like the idea that they're just the algorithm is just trying to pinpoint little things, just like genetics, and grab particular traits out of the DNA sequences and put those together, and you can decide like how much noise, how much grain, like how much you push forward, right or left. And so breeding is like a very structured thing that we can see in a very simple way that is literally built the same way. So you're just participating in finding those traits and running that. And then with clones and everything, of course, you got like epigenetics, back to that, where it's like, yeah, it can be different to hunt through phenotypes in seeds and try and find those. But also for new growers and people, I'm sure most people are advanced or listening to the podcast, but if you're a newer grower and you're getting clones and then you're wondering why your clones aren't working the same way as your friend who, you know, shipped you one from another state or up the mountain or something like that, it's because epigenetics is going to play a part in the traits that do end up being laid down and then end up expressing themselves during those environments. So you are also pheno hunting when you're trying to take 50 clones and of all kinds of different kinds and saying, well, what's going to work here?
Pedro, you're going to set off your fire alarm over there, right? But not to get too deep into the weeds, but what the hell does epigenetics mean, Vader? This is a big word.
Epigenetics are going to be more of the genetic traits that are laid on top of your baseline genetics that are on top of yourself. So different expressions of things are going to involve epigenetics versus the baseline genetic of something. But those again, that turns into a really deep conversation, lectures and long things and stuff I am not even prepared to be able to talk about because it's been years and I would end up probably already said a wrong word or two already. So
that's totally fine.
Drag me to the gallows if I said something. They're like, hey, an idiot. Like, I am an idiot. I will say that. And I'm not always perfect about it.
I was trying to remember all the big words, but I think I got lost.
Well, Vader, since the last time you and I have met in person, I have had 2 children of my own, and it's pretty
Congratulations.
cool. It's pretty cool to see genetics and breeding, so to speak, in real life and how that happens.
You're a breeder.
Yeah, technically, so to speak, nowadays I am. But you know, in real life, just to see those phenotypic expressions and stuff like that come through. But it's, to be able to do it on a mass scale, we're talking hundreds or thousands of seeds. It's just something totally different. And to see the generational variety we get so quickly in cannabis versus, people, obviously it changes much quicker. One of the strains when I, was introduced to you and kind of got familiar with Ocean Grown that you bred with particularly was Alien Rift. And you mentioned it once. Do you have something now that you've kind of leaned into, or a particular male or something like that you like breeding with in current day? Or is it more just the variety, trying to find something new?
Just variety, finding some new stuff, wandering on a walkabout, as you'd say, with the different stuff. I mean, over the years, for sure, like just like anything, still friends, we've traded seeds, we've traded different stuff. I've gotten more into some of the preservation projects, like some of the more traditional Hawaiian strains, which just have family members and things that have access to, so been shared with. Some of the stuff haven't really gone anywhere. Some of it I've continued to kind of work with and play with. But it definitely at the same time, much smaller scale levels, a few times a year, throwing some of those test chambers together in between, just keeping up regular stock just for, keeping in stock for the business. And don't have as much space for sure going on as we had when things are growing. But just like any business, as you grow and you have more revenue to be able to apply to your R&D, then you're going to have more space and availability to do that as things shrink. Some by my own choice and some by not a choice, right? And the decisions were had to made. So a little bit more in some of the older school strains I've messed with, especially since I haven't been really worried about commercial flower structure style. There's so many companies and so many people providing that. I don't feel a lot of pressure for that's so much of an issue. And it allows me to, I think, experiment a little more. So still do the aliens, but alien, that one can really take over a lot. The males, they'll just dominate in the genetics with a lot of strains. So that's something that you kind of keep over there, but you got to keep it in itself and can't get it into everything, or it's just going to kind of take over. And then before you know it, it's like, oh, all of this tastes the same, right? Especially if you're trying to get variety. So bridging past that for a bit, I think that during some of the years, got real heavy in some OGs, got real heavy in some cookie strains. Alien, pulled Alien into some things. Oh, that was taking over. Okay, well, let's step back away from that. Let's jump earlier or grab something off on the side that's going to be less dominant in that way for just the baseline genetics.
I feel like while I have a good variety of terpene profiles in my garden, and I'm continuing to add new ones every year, I'm just full of fruit over here. It's just grape, garlic
Dude, I am
fruit,
so
and
with you there.
orange fruit, and raspberry fruit, and grapefruit, and it's all fruit. And I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I guess if you find something you like and you really like have a nose for or whatever, maybe you just lean into. But I'm at the point where I'm like, well, maybe I should cut out garlic punch because I kind of don't like it as much as I might like these other ones, and it's just
Space.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
Yeah,
playing.
you should cut it
space,
out.
it's
You
just-
should cut it out to me. I think for a little while. I think
well, and that's the, what I've decided from this point on. I think, and I guess saying it publicly, you'll have to hold me to it. It's November 3rd, 2023. I think if I ever do from this point forward, decide to retire a strain, I'm going to do just that. I'm going to retire it. I'm going to take like 100 cuts of it. I'm going to release it and let the people do with what they want from there. You know what I mean? Because I no longer have the space or the gumption or whatever it might be to continue on with that strain. It might have been beaten out for one reason or another, but I'd hate to just see it go away for no reason. It's like if someone wants it, I guess give them the option to have it.
I haven't had a good garlic punch in a minute. I remember.
Hey, I know you keep saying we're friends. Can I get a friend's Addy?
Absolutely. We got a primal punch that we're harvesting out here again this year. Same primal we had for fucking ever. And she went into a re-veg this year, so she went a lot later. She actually froze probably 3 times. And man, she's sticky, stinky. I'm so excited to wash her. Excited to wash her.
I did really like the Primal, and Med does a great job with that. Those ones are like really good. Where like the garlic, you guys are crazy. I just can't.
That's not a fan.
I mean, it's something different, man.
Personal thing, but you won't find that around with me. So
There's been
I love
lot.
it. I'll smoke it if you give it to me, but
There's been a lot in chat asking about Malibu pie.
And the Hawaiian strains in general.
Right there we go again. Right there. Another
It's
Malibu pie.
Some Malibrew here.
yeah,
Is that
definitely
related.
Malibu's.
Yeah,
Malibu has some Malibu pie and a little bit more, some perps and OG in it from the Witch's Brew and everything like that. Yeah, definitely got into like the sweet flavors. Cookies and as not as much as like the baseline for cookies itself, but as it started to bridge off in like key lime pie, things like that, I definitely leaned into that and pulled a lot from that. That inspired me a lot, and that's where we ended up getting into some of these like the Malibu. Now the major one I've had lately is the Yoda soda. Kind of gotten into the sodas for myself and for us. Found one crazy pheno. That's just like insane, great growth structure, everything. The clone mom itself is just like total commercial, totally handed it off to some commercial friends locally and everything, and just like walked from that. And then I kept breeding into it, but definitely have leaned a lot more myself over the years into saying, you know what, the ones that I don't like or something personally, screw it. I'm not even going to do this for like, oh, I want to do this because of the market. There's so many people with such great gear out there. So the variety actually works so well for me because like I can just concentrate on what I want to do. And I've definitely leaned in a lot more of that fruitiness and everything like that while trying to hold it, which is why running with like, say, the Maui Wowie and pulling that in and now getting like these really sweet, like pineapple and passion fruit style flavors, like really unique that you just don't find a lot. But it kind of sets me off into being like, well, I should start testing this and really diving in to see what like going on with the terpenes. Something weird's going on, and I'm not finding that when I go to my friends' dispensaries, a couple of them locally, and I'm like trying out all the new stuff, and they got some clones around. They're trying to push something on me. Oh, you got to mess with this. You got to try that. But I don't see some of these flavors we're pulling out. And then when I show them, they're like, oh, that's crazy. Like, how do we get into more of this stuff? But at the same time, because I'm starting to run them with the Mauis and people are like be testing. And as we start to like, we have released some out to our testers and we have them around, the structure isn't going to be in the commercial way that you're used to. It's going to be you're going to find yourself a lot more in the middle between something from the 80s and 90s, right? Than you are from something, past 2005 as far as structure goes. Or maybe some of the really good stuff that was like,
what does that
the
look
structures
like?
weren't good in the late 90s and the early 2000s. You have your OGs and all kinds of stuff, Kushes, but
I found some really good Yoda sodas that washed beautifully. So
very nice.
I loved that. Was one of my favorites that we've done.
It's currently my ultimate favorite. I think it might be my all-time favorite. I don't know what to do about it.
The Maui,
wow.
but the pineapple Maui was, I had one of 6 that was pineapple that was insane also.
Yeah, the pineapple flavors that straight come from it, like there's just no denying it. Like you pop a jar for anybody and they're like, whoa, like it's just like pineapple tart in some of them. There's just, very almost like, pineapple jelly or something. I don't know how to explain it.
That
Right.
that definitely seems like one I need to add to the quiver, so to speak, because I have so many different fruits. I swear I'm gonna get a whole cornucopia of them before I'm done here.
Nice. Well, you should try this one out because, like, when you have a flavor that has like a viscosity to it, you're like, it smells thick, like it's not just like thin, like it's like in the air, like it has that. That's why I say it's like, oh, it's like a
Like
cream
it fills
or
a
like
room,
like
or
no, like it puts in your mind that it like came from something like a pastry, like right, like a jelly. I don't know. It's hard to explain in that realm, but
that's how I would describe my Cobra milk currently, because it
Okay,
does have
cool.
that creaminess. It's a jealousy crossed with cereal milk, so it really has that fruity pebbles Trix cereal kind of flavor profile
nice,
to it. And I love that flavor profile. So I
do
just
too. I do too.
and like you can find any flavor profile in cannabis. You just got to find the right person that has the strain or the cut or the seed or whatever.
Oh yeah.
It's literally that is the most mind-blowing part about this plant to me. Maybe we can shift to that. And what is it to you that drew you to cannabis? Because for me, it was like the medicinal value. It was literally replacing a medicine for me that gave me a reason to use it and to then grow it myself and then to share it with others. But like the most mind-blowing part of this whole thing to me is the fact that this singular plant, which is on this background behind us with these 5 to 7, maybe sometimes 13 fingered leaves, you know what I mean, and these crazy varietals that we'll get it. I mean, you could have a field of them and sometimes every single one smells different, and it could smell like maybe every single smell you've ever smelled on this planet, and maybe sometimes something new you've never smelled before. And that's just like, that's the most mind-blowing part about it to me. I mean, is it to you too? It doesn't hold that much weight to you. It's just like, I can't get over it. It's something new every time we talk to somebody. There's a new flavor, and it's like, how?
That's what's always turned me on about the Trop C that Eden has, that I work with. It's such a citrus flavor, it's undeniably citrus, almost like you're biting into an orange, an unpeeled orange.
Okay,
like overwhelming. So especially at low temperatures when you're dabbing it, but just insane. And I guess my point is every time I dab it, I'm always just amazed that a cannabis plant can taste so much like an orange. Because show me an orange plant that tastes like cannabis.
And I think actually, if you come back down to the genetic concept, that was something that really intrigued me, was that like basically in the genetics of the plants is locked in the millions of years of evolution of like these plants that are so similar to other plants that are around. So terpenes and we know these aren't just found in cannabis, of course, right? They're everywhere, all over the place. So you can get through it. Like I found it about medical. I didn't really know much about like that stuff. Smoked weed a few times in high school, but I have no legacy of being like a kid growing up as a stoner or something and having that kind of background. It wasn't until I was injured, got out of the military, and like needed something to get me off like pharma stuff. I was on a bunch of steroids, and I found cannabis. Like my friend joked, like Peter Tosh, like Bob Marley, you know, like cures asthma, you know, like it's in the song. And I'm like, all right, well, screw it. It can't hurt. I'll give it a shot. I've smoked weed a few times. Like I'm not against it. Whatever. Smoked it, and then like I had an epiphany. Like the first time, like afterwards, couldn't tell you the difference it made and the fibromyalgia and everything that I was suffering at the time. It was just insane. It was
You
like
never
night and
smoked
day.
up to that point?
I had smoked a few times, but it
Okay,
always had
but not
been
for
like, you know,
medicinal.
having a beer in high school while like
Yeah.
someone passed a joint around, and I got a little lit, and I was like, all right, you know, but what's the big deal? Why is it illegal? Like,
Right,
oh,
right.
it's so lame, whatever. But I was in the sports and things for so like at such a high level that
Drug testing.
it just didn't really come across, even without the drug testing part of it. It just wasn't. I was too busy doing these other things, so it just really wasn't. You know, that stuff just didn't really appeal to me so much. But when you're like laid up and you're messed, like, you know, you'll try anything. Blew my mind though, because I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, how do I feel this way? Why is it like this? What is going on? The only way I could find out about this information was to dive into the foray of like what the cannabis industry was and how much it had been built up. And that's why like I'm a big proponent of, like, oh no, standing on the shoulders of giants. Like me too. Like I wandered into something, was super lucky, and then had the right connections, right way. I researched, found it, and then I had to grow it myself because that's the way it was. Well, when you have to grow something yourself, then you learn about it. And when you start learning more about it, I was inspired and intrigued about it. So I wanted to get into like the idea of, okay, well, it's breeding. Let me try breeding. Only to find out that, well, in the genetics, all of these flavors are here. So you can take, I mean, if you were really stuck on a desert island, you'd be blown away what you could take, like a very small amount of gear that seems like it's backed into a corner. Start grabbing those phenos. It starts with a little inbreeding, but before you know it, if you get it, those traits and things farther and farther away, you can expand and expand until you find any flavor. So anything you have can be turned into something else. Whether or not how easy it is to find that and to hunt through it and get to it, just like AI, right? Trying to make AI art or something, you know, you want to make AI a certain way and prompt it, but like you can get there eventually. That's like the really interesting thing for me. So like that baseline genetics. But as you said, or as we said, like when you do the genetics, you got your baseline genetic, and then you asked about epigenetics. Well, that's like the idea of twins. Two twins are pulled away from each other. Go throughout their lives. One lives in the tropics and gets sun all the time and all kinds of stuff, and the other one lives in the snow and does whatever. Over time, some different traits may come out. How dark their hair is, how their color of their eyes, things like this. Those are the epigenetic traits that are built within you to get you those different things. So you can use some of that to see where the genetics can go by experimenting with clones, for example, right? Experimenting with stressing them, doing different stuff. That can give you hints and ideas about what's built in closer on the genetic level that may have a trait which you can turn on or off. Some traits, this is where you get into like recessive traits and dominant traits, where some things, like I said with the Alien Rift, you breed that against something, the terpenes
So
and the
dominant.
genetic trait or that like really lemony like spice,
Yep.
it just overtakes everything and it's dominant, and the recessive genes are just stuck underneath it. And it's really, 1 in 10,000 maybe you'll find
Oh wow.
one that would go over. I'm speaking ill, but that's an extreme example. I wouldn't say that that's the actual number of that.
Okay.
But just using that as like an extreme example of just the idea of it.
Theoretically, it could happen.
Yeah, where maybe you have a 50-50 chance something will come out purple when you breed, perps and an OG together. Although generally, if you want OG flavor, trying to get OG flavor and a purple plant just doesn't work. There's something linked to those traits, right? So nowadays, we've had enough that like you do find those things because people have been able to do it. We have enough people doing it. That's a beautiful thing about having so many people able to participate in it. Where in the 2000s early, when I was first breeding, it was an impossible task to make. I mean, the Merlot was the first thing, and I would say that the Merlot itself, it had the purple and it had some OG flavors, but it was the closest thing that anyone and any of us had found at the time to get the OG flavor, but it wasn't exactly the OG flavor. And I just kept working on it and just kept working on it over time until I got to something that was pretty close within the realm that it could real feel like it was within that.
At least pass for it.
Yeah. Now, if I were to able to take 1,000 years gunning on just those strains, eventually I would find it. And
Well,
so can you.
I've heard that it only takes 40 years of dog breeding to completely breed out eyesight. And I imagine like dogs work faster than humans. Cannabis plants obviously work faster than dogs. 40 years to completely breed out certain traits. Now, I don't know if we want to breed anything out, but as you know, is there anything you'd like to like breed in? You know, is there something you kind of want to breed in, or maybe you could just like wave a magic wand and be like, all right, CBGA is 10% on all my plants, you know, like I don't know, something like that. Is there some certain trait that you really just want to wave a wand over?
For me personally, again, back to that hippiness, like I think it's great to have those kinds of goals, and certain people have certain aspirations to need to hit something for whatever reason that is. Maybe it's a medical thing, maybe it's just a business thing to corner a market, who knows? And that's great because we all can decide what we're going to do. For me, there's nothing really special or particular that I would want. I love the journey part of rolling the dice and seeing what nature is going to give me. And can try and use the environments to help promote certain kinds of traits, to find certain kinds of things. But I find the most joy in being astonished that something happened, to finding something new, something different than I thought. Like, oh, I'm trying to make it OG in purple, but then turns out it's got this other thing going on where, like, right, it's super, super sticky and oily. It's like, like drooling,
The unexpected, right?
So the unexpected is actually the thing. So when you say a magic wand, well, then my magic wand would be like, give me something I wouldn't expect.
Yeah, everything's different.
Random.
Yeah.
Just roll the die.
Yeah, that's fun. That's got to be. I mean, if we're taking fun to the max, that's probably what it is. It's probably also the most potential for train wreck in terms of actually having a successful grow and feed hunting all of these types of things in maybe one environment.
Yeah,
it's a huge potential waste
the
of time.
burden.
Waste of time. Vader likes to hunt, but some of us like and or need the yield and or return. So it could be a huge waste of time, into some people's grows. And that's
Absolutely.
Sometimes, that's a lot of times why they search for that clone instead of wanting to pop a pack of seeds again.
Yeah, and I think it's just about, where you feel that you want to make your contribution. And for me, my contribution, while I have this short time here on this planet, is to, follow my heart in the way I do it. And that's why, like, I have no shame in that and saying it and standing behind that. It's a hill I'm willing to die on. So like, that's the way. And if that doesn't work out for business or for certain things, then that's okay for me. I'm willing to sacrifice that. And there's other places, and I know better. I know that I could breed certain ways and promote products certain ways, and it would have a certain kind of success, right? But we all need to like find what is pleasurable for us, the way we want to like live our lives and do our stuff.
All I'm saying is, if you cross Super Boof with Alien Rift, you're going to be the king of next year's commercial market.
Well, I'll give you an Alien Rift, and if you want to go do that, you're welcome to. I will support you.
I don't have an interest, but there's an opportunity there for someone, I guess.
But I'm into sharing. Like, if someone were to come to me and ask about that stuff, I'm the kind of person to be like, sure, how can I help? Like, what do you want to do here?
Do you have I guess I don't know how to phrase this, an acceptable failure rate for germination? You know what I mean? Like, you talked about having this basically a 2-year-old seed stock versus a 5-year-old seed stock versus 10, 15-year-old seed stock. Obviously each one of those categories is probably going to have an acceptable failure rate when it comes to germination. I'm kind of curious to know what that is for like that kind of 2-year range, but also what it is for 10-ish years, because I do plan on keeping some of these genetics around for a long time, and I would like to down the road pop them, and that is the reason I am holding on to them. There's a reason I haven't popped these specific ocean grown genetics, for one reason or another, but I eventually do plan on popping them.
Quick, I want to jump in here. So when we talk about success rate and popping beans, right? Like, if I pop a pack of 10 or 11 beans, right, and only 6 of them pop, well, I done fucked up. I'm not gonna get on the phone and be like, "Yo, Vader, what the fuck, bro? You fucking," you know what I'm saying? Like,
Well, I want you to. I'm the kind of
made
person
that
who's
mistake.
like, I want someone to do that. I mean, if it's an honest mistake, they weren't really, someone's into it. Like, of course, like it's just about success. So I don't think that's so much of an issue, and
But I think the
that's why I have a
huge
place
barrier-
where most people aren't. For the small amount of people that may be malicious in their intent for something like that to get free stuff or do something, that's fine. They can have it. Maybe it's going to help them.
Exactly.
That because I really truly believe that people are genuine, right, in being a part of the community. I think the community itself breeds that kind of camaraderie in the community, and so that's okay. And also, it's helpful for me to know if people don't say something I don't know. I can ask about variables. And it turns out that sure, maybe 3-year-old seeds are fine as long as the water temperature is pretty good. But for some weird reason, after year 2, colder water temperatures really nuke them, and then they're just not doing well. So what's the environmental causes? What are the things?
To your point there, or your question for Growly, I'm pretty sure Vader has a video on popping old seeds.
And then there are techniques where you can use everything from hormones, and then especially nowadays with tissue culture. The greatest, easiest thing to do now is to pop your seed, get it to germ. So you've got the plasma. Once you've got that out and in there, then boom, you're going right to tissue culture, and then you're breeding it out. You're just nuking it up out of there, and that's like pretty much.
I went down that rabbit hole on YouTube.
Seeds. Yeah,
that's a deep rabbit hole on YouTube. It gets scary.
It just takes a bit sterilization, doing all that, and things can get out of hand really quickly. So, and it takes equipment and time and effort, and it is not always like 100% on. So
don't demonetize us, Vader. But look at that, 8 years ago.
There we go. I knew I remembered it from somewhere. Boop.
Oh, how kind! Thank you.
Don't worry, I'm subscribed.
If you want to support the channel, make sure to like, subscribe, comment. Even if it's just aloha.
I love it, dude.
Helps everybody grow.
Is the studio you're in right now? Is that where you do your editing?
This is currently my office, where editing is done. It gets moved around, or I have different things. I did have like the editing station computer here, but then I moved it up to it's higher up, so I can stand at it and do techie soldering and things like that, or whatever.
Nice.
So it's a little bit more of a hardware
Workbench.
station at the hardware workstation workbench right now. But instead of getting a standing desk that would go up and down for me, I just put a standing one over there, and this is just my normal one that I have over here with the monitor. So so I have a few computers that are all hooked up to these monitors now, and I try and just have that workflow. So
I've got my desk here and then a lower entertainment center behind me with just printers on it. I need like an actual workstation in here, though.
I have a massive like 8-foot by 4-foot desk here with everything. So, but it is a nightmare. It doesn't, all those fancy videos where everybody's got that clean desk and they've wrapped all the wires up and everything, and they're all into it.
Everywhere.
No, mine looks like the alien sci-fi movie where it's just like people have just been running wires and cords, and we pull them and we put in new things. Just like tonight when we were having audio issues and my mixer was being weird. I had to pull the Scarlett out. Just swap it out real quick. It happened in 5 minutes.
Love it.
So yeah, efficiency with that's organized chaos.
Yeah, exactly.
It's definitely the system.
I always look forward to new equipment because it means I can redo the cables that I've screwed up since the last piece of equipment I bought. It's always a rat's nest.
Dread the new equipment because I don't want to get into it.
Like unplugging and unfeeding a wire.
And it never works the first time around, or always end up like getting into a deeper rabbit hole of problems. It's supposed to make your life easier, and it just seems like it makes it harder.
Mm-hmm.
I like peaked at my techie status peaked when I was like 22 to 24.
You're doing great now, though. I mean, you sound good. Like you've come a long way with your equipment here,
bro. I don't want to. When this
just don't touch it.
Like, there's a lot of people, a lot of time, a lot of hours in setting this, and this is now. Can I tweak it here and there and do? Sure, but man, if I got to go through this again, some bitch.
If it ain't broke, you don't fix it. All right. Is that
Yeah.
Nice.
I
Try and
think
keep to that.
I think you asked for Growly, jumping back, how we got into the cannabis. Do you want to go around the round about this? I wanted to get into it.
That'd be awesome.
I wanted to get high. I started when I was 14, 15 years old. Just wanted to get high with guys. It was as simple as that. And then I just kind of kept getting high with the guys. There was no real medical use for me. So to speak of. And then in 99, I started growing in an apartment in Madison, Wisconsin.
Okay, I was going to ask, like, was that the same place you're like living now, or is that like somewhere else in a different environment? Like,
yeah, completely different environment, completely different state, completely different. I mean, 20 some years ago. Yeah, completely different. I mean, the environment in which I grew in and things that I did to it is laughable and ridiculously laughable. We won't even get into that. But nonetheless,
my first grow was with one of those bulbs from Home Depot. I popped a seed, like some Miracle Grow.
The big CFL ones?
I think it was Miracle Grow. No, like the little bulbs that you just plug in, the little screw lights, and like put that over the plant, and thought that's all you needed. And it was growing up, and then my friend was like all excited about it and was stroking the plant, broke it in half, and it died. So that's my first grow.
So yeah, I was growing in 99, and as matter of fact, we were just talking to Bubble Man a couple weeks ago.
Awesome!
I bought my first set of bags in 99 as well. After that first harvest, because we wanted to wash some hash, and then I laid off the growing and the processing, if you will. I mean, that was just all failed attempts back in the day. I laid off until pretty much until I picked up the camera. When you can go back here in the Pedro's Grow Room YouTube channel and see the first video when I first picked up the channel, or the GoPro, and called it, "Hey, welcome to Pedro's Grow Channel." So but I mean, I do have a little bit of a legacy going back, to 14,
big
15
legacy.
years old.
Don't shoot yourself short.
and then starting to grow in 99, and then processing. My God, when we started processing here, my first wash was done in the bathroom, in the tub, in the shower. So
nice.
One of my first presses was done out in the wood shed out here in the back with the 10 ton press. I don't know.
Big old breaker bar too, right?
Yeah, I broke that step. I smashed that press, dude. That breaker bar. It was a whole fence. It was a fence post pounder.
Post pounder, yeah.
Post pounder.
Shit.
It had a big ass weight on the top of it. Had the handles on it. It slid over a post, and you pounded a post in the ground. Well, I slid that. You get those old presses. Just standard presses that you have on any workbench, and in order to get more pressure on it, I would just slide that over the handle and just wrench on that son of a bitch, lean on it until I finally broke the press. So.
Wait, did the press broke before the bags did? That's kind of impressive.
Oh yeah, no, Rosin. I mean, shout out to Rosin Evolution. I've been with them since the beginning. If you mess up a Rosin Evolution bag, you kind of did something wrong. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Or email me and we'll figure it out.
What about you, Superior? What got you into
It's kind of same with Pedro. I started smoking young, grew up, I was in Detroit. It's what we did. We hung out and we smoked weed. Joined the Marine Corps, and had to get a rather extensive waiver for the amount of times I smoked weed, but they still let me in. Then, just like Vader, also post Marine Corps, I broke, so they had me on an ungodly amount of pharmaceuticals, and I went back to weed, and it was like, holy shit, I don't need codeine. I feel way better without codeine in my body. So I started growing seriously. My first big grow was 96, I would say.
Oh, nice.
So I had 1,000 watt in a closet in an apartment, allegedly in a prohibition state. I never have been in a legal state until Michigan went legal. You know,
Statute
so
of limitations gotta be gone. I don't think you have to
Right.
allegedly anymore, but
If
you know,
not,
It
it's
was-
all fair. It's all fair.
but because of how we grew, and it was always plant count that got you in trouble, I learned how to grow really, really large hydro plants. So that's how I always grew. I grew hydro, I grew big, because 2 plants was way different than 12 plants. And then once Michigan went legal, then it was just like, holy crap, I can grow 12. No one's going to say anything. So I grew 12 big ones. That's when I had to call Pedro and be like, you need to teach me how to make bubble hash, because this is too much flour in my basement. when you got 2 full basement shelves full of, you know, hundreds of jars and a whole flour room, like, we need to rethink this.
It's a whole hell of a lot easier throwing flour into a big ice bucket when you've got mass amounts of it. Then it's your only jar, your only harvest. and if this fails, you're gonna have to go buy some more weed.
Yeah. The look on people's faces when we were standing out in the garage and I dumped my first 1.5 pounds of weed in a washing machine, they all just about died. They're like, what in the hell are you doing?
Especially if they've never seen that much at one time. You know what I mean?
I've
That's
done
not
it.
an
Yeah,
issue
everyone's
for
buying-
most people.
I mean, it's the UP, you know, people are buying 1/2 ounces at most at a time. And
You know,
That was
that,
a lot of
that dark plasma that I grew, great flower, smoked great flower, but it was such a fucking dense plant that I couldn't get it to the inside of it, you know, to get the trachs. And it's kind of the same with mimosa, you know, great fucking flower, but don't try to wash it, you know. And so when the only way you know how to do these things is either to listen to one of these podcasts or do it yourself. And that's where the heartache comes in, you know, because you've thrown in X amount of flour that you know is great to smoke. And now you got a big pile of poop and a bunch of wet flour.
I mean, that's the drawback of how I grow, right? I'm, like we said earlier, I don't grow from clone. I'm 100% seed from seed. Lately, it's all been ocean grown testing, you know, so it's new strains. No one really knows what's going to happen. It's just like, but when I have a successful harvest, it fills my freezer far enough that it's like, yeah, the rolling the dice is great though. Like,
it's a fun part
like Vader
of it.
said, that's, I've had tastes and smells in the past 3 years that I hadn't had in the previous 30. So it's that the Yoda soda was something special. Purple water and, you know, purple hash didn't come out in the rosin as much, but man, it tastes so good.
Is that just a high anthocyanin trait? Is that basically what that is?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Yeah, but it has to make it into the head, right? So
Yes,
that's,
I mean,
Yes, because it kind of
yes.
creeps up the stem into the head, right?
yeah.
I just I guess I could pull it up. I'm being lazy right now, but I got 2 new strains recently. My wife and I are celebrating our anniversary, and we decided to buy each other new seeds. And one of the things that got recommended to us was it's called Raspberry Parfait by Humboldt Seed Company. And the reason being is because one of my friends knows that I'm very akin to terpinolene, that terpene, strictly that terpene. And that strain in particular happens to be very high in that, you know, amongst the breeders testing, right? So we ordered that one. And then the other one we ordered as a strain that her and I have both very much missed and wish we were still propagating. And that's grapefruit Durban. And so we found the strain from the same company called Squirt, and that is claims to have a very much a tart, you know, sweet and tart grapefruit flavor, which is what we're looking for. So I have no idea about the production or anything outside of that, but oh my gosh, the flavors, guys. We could go on and on about just finding those flavors. But again, it's like fruity flavors. You know what I mean? I don't know how far we're really extending from our palate, I guess.
That's what we like here too. We like the fruity flavors around here. The gassy doesn't really do it for us. You know, both the wife and I kind of have the same palate, so it works out good. You know, we like the same things. And It always ends up being the fruity ones. Luckily, we've had a lot of those to test recently.
That's awesome. What's next coming down the chain here, Vader? I mean, we kind of seen the Hawaiian kind of theme for a little bit. Obviously, way back in the day, we saw the Alien Rift theme. Even after that, I think we saw a little bit of a cookies theme through there. Do we have something coming up kind of that we're leaning into in terms of like profiles or lineages or anything like that with Ocean Road?
I wanted to hear about your base run from the start, but as far as that stuff goes, you're trying to avoid. I can see it. Mostly just the lineage stuff and some of the older lineage that have just gotten right family friend stuff. Like I said, Hawaiian based strains, or at least locally to some of the Hawaiian areas. I wouldn't call these like super traditional landrace style. This is just like flavor profiles that have been working out and doing stuff down there. Sweetness, getting more into those pineapples. They're a different kind of fruity palette than the cookies like that we were running, and especially up like the key lime series and everything like that. That was really like I leaned a lot into, because I wasn't so much on the base cookie like realm. The doughiness, I don't know, it always had, especially like just straight forum and things like had a little bit of muskiness to me that I don't know. It reminded me of like, it just scared me. So I always had this weird thing. Like when I say scared, I just mean like it smells like mildew or something to me. Like a hint of it, like not bad. I know people love it and there's nothing against that. I just get something weird in my own like profile that I'm just like, oh, I don't know. Not as much. We're like, leaning into that more key lime flavors, like really brought out a lot of fruitiness, really pushed into a different realm. So kind of mixing some of that with these like other pineapple flavors and that tardiness that kind of comes with it, but very sweet, like very sweet driven, dominant traits as far as the flavors go for the sweetness. And then the structure itself, definitely not disappointed getting into some, like got a couple of Mauis that are like they themselves are very, I wouldn't call them dense comparatively to like things that we're used to now and we see on the shelves, but not as light and fluffy as like a lot of the stuff that you can find in there. It's still pretty varied, and that was like done on purpose by people like and growers like and friends, family friends who are they're just throwing things off for the next time, right? They're just throwing things for the year. They're gathering enough things and putting some stuff. Sometimes they'll take certain ones and go put them over in a corner to try and get them more that way and mess with it a little bit. But again, they're just like trying to get to the next season, hang out, do their own production so that they can smoke themselves, etc.
So you're not going after any strains that have any kind of donut leaning qualities, do you?
Donut, the sort of doughy breadness.
I'm sorry, Pedro just
Are you
busted out a
making fun?
bag of donuts.
Oh, gotcha.
I'm full stoner, man. Donuts and milk over here.
I love it. Sorry, no, Vader, it's not that I'm trying to avoid it. I was thinking about it while these guys were talking, and I feel like I could literally do a whole show on this, and I have to be my own guest, so I don't want to just go down that rabbit hole right now. But I do feel like we need to back up and allow you to tell us about your kind of introduction to cannabis, because I know you've probably told this story 100,000 times, and I feel like you alluded to it a little bit on here, but you have quite a storied history. And with these experiences that a lot of us don't. And I just think you could expand a little bit more on that, like what brought you to this and what kept you here, really, because we could all find 100,000 excuses to not do what we're doing too, but there seems to be just as many reasons to do it, and to continue to pushing, for what we're looking for, what we're growing for, what we're breeding for, what we're extracting for. Tell us a little bit more about that if you could.
If it's just like a foundation thing, I mean, yeah, I alluded like, hey, I was in the military, Marine Corps as well, and got medical injury and was discharged, and that whole thing got PEB'd because they were like, nope, you're not going to get any better, but if you're even going to get better, and you're definitely not going to get any better in the next freaking whatever years, so no, you're out. Which was really disappointing to me at the time, because like, I don't know, I really like, you don't go do something like that if you're not
Right.
trying to
I
like,
would have been career same.
yeah, like get into it. And I have a family history. My family is that way. I have grandparents and things and stuff. So it was a proud thing for me, and I was very disappointed about it. And even though people like, it is what it is, and there's nothing you can do about it in those situations, you still, even on a mental level, like can be a little debilitating that, I'd worked so hard for athletics, things like that, gotten into it, wanted to do career, made a choice to go in actually at the time and not do degree and stuff and go an officer, but to do enlisted so I could do an enlisted run, then go to college and then decide if I wanted to go an officer route or if I wanted to go off and bridge off into something creative or do something else in the just civilian world.
Was it basketball or something else? Because if you guys don't know, Vader is probably the tallest guy in the game. Some of you guys have met me and you guys have told me I'm tall or whatever, but there's few people that I've met in my life that I literally have to look up to, and Vader is one of them.
Yeah,
Tall dude.
Yeah, funny enough, when I graduated high school, I was 6'5", but by the time I was 23, I was 6'8". So I still even grew afterwards.
So crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, I think even in the military, it says like I'm 6'6.5" or something. And,
Genetics, huh?
like, got out there. Yeah, I just kept going. Actually, yeah, Valkyrie was, because we were early dating at the time. She was concerned that I had a
It's that Maui
pituitary
genetic.
gland issue, and I'd have to go checked out because the gigantism was just going to keep going.
Oh, damn.
But luckily not. And but even though I'm funny looking, it is just the way. So quite the tall drink of water, yes. And that that goes along with that thing. Like back in the day, I like went off like a Sublime album for my screen name for a bit, and then I kind of switched over to Vader was my online persona screen name for everything from IC Mag and Overgrow and all that kind of stuff. Later on, so that's where the Vader sort of persona comes from, and things was just like, yeah, I'm super tall and I had been in the military, more machine than man, and that was kind of like a fun thing. So that's where that history of like even my screen name and that persona comes from. And at the time when I was a little younger, I think that like nowadays I'm way more hippie and chill and just kind of like let it go. But growing up and being raised, I had a very strong feminist Viking woman mother. And so it left me with a sort of particular demeanor that people sometimes would joke with me about, a bit of a Vader persona. But nowadays, I think I'm chilled out quite a bit, more back to Anakin. And try and find that childlike wonder. But yeah, back then I was super hardcore about things, did research, found cannabis. This is 2000, right, when I got out. So I got out right before 9/11 actually. And that just sent me down a different path, especially, like I said, just like Superior, got so much better and was just blown away about it. Researched it, looked into it, very techie on the internet, but things were super illegal. Like, yes, I was super lucky that I actually had a ailment at the time that they would give me medical for. So I felt really good about that. And we did have a plant limit. But to me, I was a gung-ho kid who got chucked out of, the tyranny of that kind of stuff. And I wanted to rebel. So it didn't matter to me. It was warehouse time. Like we were going to make some money and we were going to fund some stuff. And I was going to make something, and I felt that like I was looking around and I could see the way things were going. And it felt like, hey, maybe this is like a .com thing or something. Maybe this is like going to expand itself and become much bigger. And so I would put I at the time wanted to put investment into that. Now we all know that, especially for the cannabis industry, every time we take 2 steps forward, it's 1 step back. Mm-hmm. And that is really tough. It just never gets enough legs under it to like really get the sprint going. Even though we've had those things like in the 2000 teens, right? 2014 through 2018, all the events, high times, things popping up, going crazy. And you think it starts getting some legs under it, and then again, it just
regulations go. It's a cultural shift, and then regulations stop it. Then cultural shift, and then regulate. That's my experience, at least here in Michigan.
And for me, it was very localized within the city and within the Southern California. And although there's NorCal and other things, I was much more local. I was just trying to do things around with my people, the connections I had. So got into like blowing up warehouses, doing that. That's where it started for me. Even breeding, I was the one person in our like clique crew who was into like, well, hey, why don't we breed our own things and stuff? I thought that sounded pretty cool. So I just kind of messed with that on the side and was doing that. and that's why it was always like fem breeding. I was always just trying to get traits together. I would make clones, and that's how I got into doing clones. And that's when I met G, who was just like super big at the time, in the localized like version of California and the West Coast. He was just very knowledgeable, had connections, and had tons of strains because he was a strain collector. So I happened to meet him through someone, a friend of mine who worked with him because he had left East Coast state under duress from a bunch of stuff that he had been involved in and went to hide out in Cali, but dragged strains and things along with him, things like OGs, and was because he was from that, triangle and area and stuff down in the South at the time, which the time to me was just very like, you're just sort of dopey wandering through being like, oh, cool. I know this dude. Yeah, that's great. Oh, he seems, he's really knowledgeable. And I looked up to him as a mentor. He was definitely like a good 10 or 15 years older than I was at the time. Or he obviously still is.
He didn't have like 50,000 followers on Instagram you could verify or anything.
No, but
like
nothing
that,
like this. Like I just met him. He seemed super cool, and he helped me. He was the one who was like, "Go get the George's Bible. Go do this. Go like." I was like, "All right," and I read it from top to bottom in 2 days. Came back to him and was like, "Yo, I read through all this. Like, I read the book twice.
I'm
I
a pro."
I looked through the back. If the back of the Grow Bible for George, especially those old copies. I don't know how they are now, but they would have the I forget what they called them, but he would like have mini stories about someone who grew a certain way, and it would say how successful they were. And so I was inspired by a couple of those grows, especially hydroponics. I was just like, oh yeah, NASA, this kind of stuff. This is me. Like I'm getting into this, right? We're gonna grow wheat on Mars. So that's what I wanted to do, and that's what I was really inspired about. And so through that, over the years, like, he continued doing his business. I continued meeting more people, connections, doing all of that. Everything, my connections to OG, my connections with Oregon Kid and stuff, when they brought the OG over and started releasing that out. I just happened to be there at the time, was one of the people working a business and was just part of the crew. So those kinds of things happening were a bit serendipitous, right? In their way. But there was always trials, Overgrow went down. We lost everything, knowledge, connections, all kinds of stuff. And then the communities that kind of moved over to IC Mag and then, Roll It Up, or there was a Canadian forum and stuff that I don't know if it's still there at the time. But and then there was the other one, which was the magazine, the Canadian magazine. I forget. I don't remember off the top of my head because I smoked too much weed, I guess. But anyways, but there was those, but everything kind of fractured and split up. So a lot of people who were at Overgrow, kind of some of them went over to IC Mag, and some of them went over to here, and you lose a lot of, and we lost a lot of what were these strains and what was actually the lineage and then everybody started being really nitpicky about, like, I'm the one who bred it, and I'm the person who did this, and that's like, and that really got out of control. And then of course High Times is there. There are certain editors, certain people who are writing articles being like, this is the way. And so when everybody reads in media, like something like High Times, that's what the lineage is.
That's facts.
People just go with it,
Right.
Little history is written by the winners concept.
Myself included, it's easy to just Google something and then repeat that information on a podcast or something. And then come to find out years later or something, it's like completely wrong. And it's, I guess that's just the way it is, but
I'm guilty of that kind of thing too. There's stuff that like I truly thought was a certain way and was just under the impression that that's the way it was. And then later it comes out that it may be something different or whatever. OG is a very popular story about that, right? With OG Kush Story and Bubba and everything. And like, I didn't know them. I didn't have any personal connection. So as stories kept flying around with different stuff, and everybody trying to like claim for it, I'm one of the people who was like around for it, but I never tried to lay any claim. Same with Ocean Grown. People ask like, oh, it's Ocean Grown or whatnot. Where does that come from? Well, that Ocean Grown name is something I adopted for myself, just as far as the idea that there was this lineage story from Larry, brought down the OG from Tahoe, and that when people asked about it, Kush was super popular in LA at the time, and people asked like, oh, hey, is this Kush? And although it wasn't actually related to it, right, coming from the South, doing the whole thing, but he was like, oh no, this isn't like mountain grown Kush, this is ocean grown Kush. And so that was like a rumor story for around, and it was always just kind of a silly story to me, but some people really latched onto it, and it was pushed around forums and media and all kinds of stuff. And there's an article in High Times back then in the early 2000s where they say that. But that wasn't actually the true story. So later when it comes out that this is not it, OG just stands for original, right? OG, all that. And I was always under that impression too. But it was like kind of a joke one-off of like, yeah, because I love OG so much and was around that, and I'm from Hawaii, and that's where my family and like stuff and lineage comes from. It lended itself well to that lifestyle, that beachy kind of like life that, you know, really
Yeah, the brand
set with me.
matched.
And so the brand
Yeah.
matched. So, but at the very beginning, we tried to do like a Star Wars themed thing. It was like a Death Star seeds, but then Death Star, the strain came out from Iowa or Ohio. I
Right.
can't remember. I want to
Shoot, I don't know where it came from.
but High Times published an article, and I was like, we can't do a seed company. There's a strain now. Like I didn't even know there was a strain. Where did this thing come from? And obviously that would have been a terrible idea, especially since Disney and everything bought up all the property rights, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
right.
and then
They
nowadays,
really like to sue.
but when I was younger, I mean, I'm just in my 20s, some kid just being like, yeah, whatever. You know, who cares about intellectual property rights? That kind of stuff. So just mostly just like warehouse growing, got into dispensaries, did the nursery stuff with G. We really got nerded out on strains, collecting strains. How we had a couple hundred different strains, and we were just super into it, very knowledgeable at the time about what they were comparatively to a lot of people. And then we're able to be very successful and ran the different clone shops and stuff for a bit. But those ended up having their own issues. They pop up. San Diego at the time said, yeah, you're cool, get the permits, go get a building. And then no, they start raiding everybody. We're like, you literally give them money and then they start raiding you, and you're just like, okay, well, this isn't working. So just kind of slipped off into different things. Tried to help with run some larger dispensaries. Got out of doing some of the commercial growing. Again, I think in my own ways, lucky that we didn't have any major issues with that stuff besides just the normal drama of like, getting some stuff stolen or so-and-so telling their friend and then them coming and jacking your warehouse and stuff and being like, what the fuck is going on? And who did that? And like, well, now so-and-so, you got to blame them for stuff. And it's like, and it creates a lot of drama and it's a bummer. And I just always like, that is not why I'm here, because I'm into the part of the community that's far more hippie. That's like really chill. And that's where I always try and keep it. But because of legalization, it's like, it's hard for any of us to get away from this kind of stuff. And you're always pushing the limits as much as you want to grow the plant numbers. You want to follow along the realm. Talk about statute of limitations, but
right.
Like whatever beyond the details of that, it was always very tough. So I ran this stuff pretty hard for a long time. Kept some jobs on the side, like always did seasonal work as far as regular jobs, so I could like show I had a taxes and stuff. So I worked summers, did lifeguarding, things like that, worked for the fire department. And just to keep that going until right at the end of like 2010-ish, basically. And then things were really popping off well enough that I was doing full-time cannabis and we were running big. They opened up enough down in SoCal and things are going really well. Started doing YouTube and kind of on the side. But again, like I purposely in the warehouse, like you watch those early videos, they're tents in the corner of a warehouse. And you can see it because I got the racks up. And if you look at the racks, there are some shots where like you can kind of see I've got panda tarping up on the back of the racks and it looks kind of whatever. But like over on the other side is just ridiculousness, at least for the time. And but I really wanted to participate and kind of do that stuff. But I was very scared to share the size and the availability and to flex that in the grows. Yeah. So that's where that side got to be my little experiment R&D area. I got to show some of the stuff that we were messing with, and then also at the same time show the breeding and getting into like we were doing breeding, and I'm just running breed tents, like making like that was the easiest, most flexible thing to do. And before like hardlining into making true chambers and things like that and getting into that kind of stuff. But that's pretty much the kind of baseline evolution of where it like came from. And then after that, it's kind of history. We all met and everything and got to see each other. And that's just because the industry itself was really opening up. High Times really facilitated, I think, a lot of that in those early years before they got bought out and then things slipped. But even High Times itself was basically messed up from the regulation of the different states, right? When things were far more medical, it was a lot more like, oh, loosey-goosey and open. And then and we all kind of knew it was coming, that like the moment they start like going into full rec legalization, then suddenly you can't have outdoor this, you can't do that, you can't have things together.
12,
And
6 and 6. Yeah. All the regulations.
yeah. So those things are tough. Yeah, 20 years of being in cannabis and the up and down of regulations. So not only nationally but locally, wherever I was living, because just like a normal person with a family and regular shit going on, that you're trying to balance that stuff, and I think it's tough. It's a bummer, but at the same time, like, I'm so stoked that you guys are still here. Like, people like us are still kind of hanging out, right?
Yeah.
Still,
Oh yeah,
still,
man.
still preaching the gospel, as we'd say, right, out there, and making sure that, like, we're not going to let this kind of thing die, and they won't let it, and they can kick it back to out of the free market part of it, but eventually those things will come back around. So it's good to just that, like, especially all you guys, like, I'm so stoked to see you guys, like, putting up the good fight, making sure things are happening, and pushing through the right attitude and everything, especially, right, like, displaying the right way that, like, the community should be interacting with each other. And because I think genuinely down at its core, like, everybody just has love for, like, the plant, has love for like what it's done for all of us, for our families, whether that's just putting food on the table or whether that's helping us heal. These things are the most important thing about that. And I'd say, if anything, that baseline, I come from a time in which, like, yeah, things were a lot tougher and there was a lot more sort of, physicality to some of those things and putting up the fight, even against law enforcement and stuff like that. I've definitely calmed down a lot more and just kind of, like, chilled back. But yeah, there was time when I was definitely far more rough and tough, and being the size I am and being my backgrounds and stuff.
Yeah.
I
I remember the
natural.
attitude after the Marine Corps.
It allowed me to feel safe into being able to do that stuff. I always knew, like, that things can get bad really quickly, and when it comes to certain stuff, like, things can be very, not just scary, but there are mean people out there doing bad stuff, and especially in realms where things and regulation is low. And that's my biggest issue with regulation being so bad, is it breeds itself people and certain kinds of, like, clandestine things coming in and, right, poisoning the well, as you will.
It's so true, and it's so unfortunate the amount of unprofessionalism that is involved in this industry. And, like, I mean, pre-rec and post-rec, it's like it's a breeding ground for it. I want to shift real quick before we come to a close here. One of the things that has impressed me, and I brought up your production value and all that, of course, when it comes to your YouTube channel. And
I appreciate that. I have tried over the years, but I don't think I'm great. And I see other people who do a really good job too, and you guys do a great job, even in the way you guys run through your productions.
Well, it's pretty basic time over here, but we do what we can. I just want to say, like, when it comes to packaging, even, and the marketing of things and branding, that's one of the things I take note of. One of the things I've been, I guess, professionally trained in or whatever. And I mean, it's just everything, like the color schemes, the fonts, the sticker inside the pack, the graphic on the back, the fact that you have a seal there that's got, like, a batch number on it. I just was going through old stickers. I found this one that made me laugh. OG 710 to oil 420, like, the different measurements on there. I mean, how important is marketing when it comes to all this? And we could say any business, but really when it comes to the cannabis thing, and when you're trying to start it yourself, whether it be a caregiver or maybe commercial side of things, I mean, how important it is that, because I see you clearly putting a lot of value and time and effort into it seems. Tell us a little bit about that.
I love that stuff, so it's important to me for the eye of it. I look at even packaging and marketing as an art form itself. Growing is an art form. My producing content is an art form in the way we do it.
Art.
It's all art, but it all weaves itself into each other, and all of that is collaborative, right? Those things are collaborating. Same with the, like, branding and marketing collaboration of people. Like, Shrimp, shout out to Shrimp. He is a big, and, like, not just inspiration, but a physicality in the marketing of the graphics and the creativity behind that. I'll steal some credit and say, yes, I got to say that's good, and try changing that color and maybe the font or whatever. But without that, it would have been different. I have packaging from earlier times at which I was doing something different. Like when we were doing the old matchbooks and the art that was on there, like I was collaborating with my brother at the time, and he's an artist and like really a beautiful artist. He can draw crazy stuff and like, and so that was like a part of the brand. But as you move forward and we think about the industry, we look at it, you know, what is available, then we research, we look, okay, what's going to work for packaging? Part of that packaging issue is that we had some connection to it. We had seen it. Shrimp is the one who did it. And it made a lot of sense because we were thinking future that like, hey, what if you're at a dispensary and you could just grab it off the rack? So those packages, they go on the slide racks. Those are the ones. That's what we did. I looked at it, but at the same time, yes, I wanted there to be a certain visibility of seeds. I'd look at other branding, and that's where I look for inspiration. I look around in a market and say, what do I like and want to adopt into, I think works, and what is something I don't and I want to do different. And that goes for everyone. Like if you want to be in any kind of market, and especially marketing itself, it's kind of a little bit of that. Like look around, see what's working, what you can adopt,
practices, if you will.
Yeah, don't it's not about stealing, but at the same time, like I don't know, like what's there's
don't
that fine
reinvent
line
the wheel.
between inspiring or not. And again, you just have to chalk it up to that shoulders of giants. You're not coming from nothing, right?
Yeah.
Even the availability of the tools you have, Photoshop or something to do something lends itself into that. So for the packaging, marketing, things like that, I think a lot of that is collaborative over the years. Same with like old stuff. Same with the videos and things like that. There are people behind the scenes. I'm making skits. My brother's helping me write scripts that are helping me with jokes. And nobody's ever even seen him. He's not like on any of the stuff, right? Or he's actually in a couple of videos, but
just like some hands or something. You're gonna make me watch thousands of hours of man hands.
I don't know if they took it down. If the dabbinism video is still up there, where we were talking about dabbing and doing all that, we were making kind of fun about the joke. Like we love extracts and doing all that, but like dabbing turned into this thing at the time, right? It was like this viral concept of dabbing. Like nobody was dabbing before. They were smoking hash, like on the bowl and stuff or whatever. But when we got to like move over to the other side, and I'm sure there's some real OGs who were doing it for 10 years before that, right? Freebasing or whatever they want to call it. But in that realm, like there are lots of other people and lots of other things, and I draw inspiration from that, and that is a huge part. And same with my channel. Like I've always recognized that Vader himself, it's like not, I'm a real person here, but that is really truly a persona, and I always treated it that way. I treated it as part of the marketing, and that it is only going to display a certain amount of time and a certain kind of thing out in front of other people, and I am representing other people on my team. That's why I use the word team. Throughout the years, people I'm collaborating with who are part of things, who I am drawing inspiration and stuff from too. So in some ways, yes, it's going to have a little bit of my flair in it. I get to contribute to those things, but I truly believe like a lot of people have contributed to the success of those kinds of concepts, including things like High Times, which is why it's a bummer when like big market players you find are just washed away.
Yeah, so quickly, man.
Oh, and that's the most brutal part, I think, every time something gets washed away, whether it's local regulation for us and companies and friends and things first, or something as big as like a media publication like that, where it just like, it seems like overnight with it, right? The flow that was
company
going
was a mess, though.
Well, it's true, but just think about.
I'm not going to get into the bag.
Yeah, we don't have to dive into that. But in terms of the events, I mean, they were running basically 2 to 5, 6, 7 major cannabis cups around the nation, sometimes around the globe, a year for 5, 6 plus years. You know what I mean? We saw at least 2 a year in Michigan for 4 or 5 years. And I think we had one of the last, and I think the biggest High Times event that existed, and that was the 2019 High Times Cannabis Cup, which was the first recreational cannabis cup that we had in Michigan. And that was in, I believe, August of maybe September of 2019. That's where I got those 2 cups behind me. But after that, there was the Bazaar.
You deserve them because you were killing it.
Thank you.
I got to try that stuff, so I know and say it.
There you go. There's the shirt. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. That means a lot. But it went from that to the bazaar, which was like their non-cup kind of just like sesh vending event or whatever in the same location at the Russell in Detroit, to the pandemic hitting and nothing ever happening again. And that seems like it. I mean, we could blame it on the pandemic. We could blame it on regulations. We could blame it on a shitty company or whatever. But nothing has been the same since 2019 in the cannabis market, and or at least on the legacy market, if you will. And I don't know if we'll really ever see that same kind of thing again. And if we do, I think it's going to be a long time.
Definitely a special time, and for everything. I mean, and I think it's much larger than just something as simple as like local regulation or high times. I mean, you see the stuff that goes in and out of all of that. Just like at YouTube, there was a time period at which I had someone I could pick up the phone and talk to YouTube at. Now, even creators with hundreds of thousands of followers can't pick up the phone and talk to someone in legal, totally normal markets sectors. So just the way that, like, whether it's a platform or whether it's a media, like, empire running its thing and doing stuff, those things evolve and change, and that's what happens over time. And you just try and do your best and run as hard as you can while you're doing it, right? You just try and catch that wave and enjoy it.
I do feel like we're all here trying to play by the rules, like trying to do the right thing, just trying to like really just trying to do the right thing and be involved. But it's like there's so many barriers to entry. There's such a high cost to entry. There's such an ongoing overburdening amount of regulation and oversight and fines and chances that you're never going to get again. And it's just like
volatility.
It's such an let alone market volatility. We've covered that in this show, I think, and just the massive drops we've had, not only across the country, but especially here in Michigan and Colorado. And it's just been aggressively downward since, I guess, a year after the pandemic. I mean, we can be honest. The beginning of the pandemic was a great time for the cannabis market. It exploded it. And here in Michigan, we went from, I guess, still technically illegal, other than if you have a med card and you've been approved by a doctor, like, so basically illegal in the state of Michigan, to an essential business and recreationally legal, like 21 plus, an essential business. In 3 months, we went from illegal to an essential business in 3 months here in Michigan. And I mean, that was just
had them open.
Great. Yeah. Drive-throughs, I mean, everything. It was everything. Just approve it. Everyone approved.
I missed the drive-throughs. We had them down here too, but not cool anymore.
Definitely have never been through a drive-through.
Oh, you got to do it once.
I've really been to a dispensary. I mean, most of my consumption has always been from the legacy black, gray, whatever market you want to call it. It's very rarely ever came from a dispensary. Even now, working in the commercial market, the only time that I smoke the Eden product generally, besides the required testing and whatnot, is our samples, that I get. I get 2 grams every month or something like that, and I gotta run up.
It's limited.
To the dispensary. Yeah, exactly. and so I run up and I get my samples, and then I get to try some of the Eden product, and of course I know what it is. I've had it 100 million times, but I just rarely go to a dispensary. So for me, even just going to travel to get my sample is fun, because then I get to interact with the bud tender, and I get to kind of educate them a little bit on the product and whatnot. And it's just kind of a cool thing for me, even for somebody who's been here and who's been in this market for as long as they have. And even like on the commercial side, I never go into dispensaries.
Yeah, the loss of the social part of it is the part that breaks my heart the most about every time there's an up and a down, and you get like big flows going. like us, we all used to see each other and shaking hands and trying each other's stuff,
Right.
and then years go by and we are no longer able to do that and have no place for that.
I sat around a
especially with all
table,
this.
freaking garage one time, smoked some weed.
Oh man, actually, so I'm trying to get the MBGS crew to do basically a Thanksgiving, and the model I have for that is Med Grower having everybody over.
Nice.
Just such unreal hospitality for them. That was always such a great time, and so we're trying to do
I will
something.
always cherish those times.
Oh
For
my
sure.
gosh, man! It's seriously, it's just like it's so incredible to have. I mean, let alone a public event with that many people, but like just to get that many like-minded people that you really only like this meet online, in person, and be able to have those discussions and break bread and smoke a 7.5 gram Clementine joint that everyone left the table except Vader and I, it's just like great memories, man. Great memories. So shout out to Megor. He's been on the show too. He was like episode 4, maybe. He was on this, and man, I miss
Awesome.
those days, but I look forward to more of them because I think it's certainly in our future.
Yeah, those
Absolutely.
things definitely, I'm sure, will come back to our stuff. It's always a bummer being in between the tides, the low tide, but eventually it will rise again.
Yeah, you stick around long enough, and you see enough tides rising and lowering that you just
Yeah. You try and just go with it sometimes from time to time, but I'm totally with you. I mean, it's like people in my life, like, they smoke some weed and do whatever, but to find people who have the same level of passion that you do to be able to suffer through some of this for sure. And then while at the same time, like, without the suffering part, just the love of it and all that and the interest, like it's hard to find like people like really around. And that's the really cool thing. I think that shows like this, the internet allows us to participate in and to connect and to, you know, gain knowledge from so many people, just like you guys doing so much stuff, right? I get to gain lots of knowledge by being able to pick up the phone and ask you guys when I need a question answered or something. That's one of the greatest resources that like I know I have, even if it's not talking to you guys all the time. Pedro is one of those people. When I need something, I've called Pedro, hit him up,
Okay.
and he has beyond graciously helped me in ways I can't even describe.
I'm here.
And I really appreciate
Awesome.
that, and from all of you guys.
No, riding the tide is sometimes more so for me nowadays become kind of a definition of my persona, and not that my persona isn't Pedro, because anybody that's ever met and hung out with Pedro, it's pretty this one-sided dude you get, but yeah, staying here, trying to ride the tide, trying to go through the ups and downs. But yeah, remembering those old times, man. The round table, getting together every Friday night. We kind of wanted to create a little bit of that here, but a little smaller, a little more quaint, a little more not guided. And right, we miss you, man. Good conversation.
No, absolutely. I think the show is doing great. I mean, for Girl, fantastic hosts, great questions, allows me to ramble on because I love to ramble. Everybody knows me. I could talk forever. I try to keep it back a little bit.
No, that's
to
what
have you
I
on,
mean.
man.
Yeah, that's why I have to back up too. Like sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, we have a guest on this show. I could sit here and talk for hours, but you're the important one tonight. So hey, man, we're appreciative of your time tonight. Thank you, VaderOG, so much. One more
Absolutely.
quick time for everybody out there. Where can they find you? Shout out what what's coming up next, where they can find you, just kind of how to keep up with you.
Yeah, we'll always have the websites up, so just hit your favorite search engine, Ocean Grown Seeds. You'll wander into some links about ways to go about it. OceanGrownSeeds.com is our main site, of course. I don't know, but there's a distribution site. You can find it if you go through there. I don't know where we're streaming here and what are
Everywhere.
appropriate places to.
Multicasting everywhere.
Okay, well, to say things, but regardless of that, you can find our informational site, Ocean Grown Seeds. Information are there. That'll have some links off to communities like our Discord. Ocean Grown Seeds is our Discord. You can go check that out. I have my channel, VaderOG. You can look at that at VaderOG if you type that into YouTube, or if you just search through there, put out more than enough videos. Generally, it does pop up. Should be able to find that. I think if you even Ocean Grown Seeds. So Instagram, there is Instagram for both the company and for my personal profile, but we're not really on there that much anymore because of, we'll call it Meta. Meta has decided that they have particular policies, so which is too bad. And so I've kind of backed off that a little bit. Although I do see that there are some people thriving on there, on and off. So good for that. Maybe we'll be back on there at some point. But say mostly if you want to get interaction, Discord would be probably the main place to go, kind of check out the community. But even then, I do apologize. I'm pretty like sleuthy through the dark, and unless you're superior, someone I can get to do my bidding.
Always there watching.
He's there watching. I'm there watching. So, and then as far as new stuff goes, we're working on the Hawaiian Street. I'm still doing preservation. I love that. I've been really stoked about that. Proud to be able to like do that. I feel like kind of a legacy is handed to you, and you're like, well, I got to do something with this. Let's right. Let's not let this fall by the wayside. This is really cool stuff. And then want to be able to share that with other people. I think that's the biggest thing about sharing the genetics. And that's why I love the fact that there are so many different genetic companies. I encourage that more people get into breeding, get into doing whatever, get into the industry, make an impact. Like it's only going to make everybody else and everything else stronger. And for us, we're just kind of able to now, because of that, move our way off into just like having a little bit more fun, and it's less about the commercial over the years. So looking for those fruity flavors and things like that, and some different structures, and that's kind of what we're playing with.
Well, just that outro gave me about 5 more questions, so we're definitely going to have an episode 2 with you. And cheers, guys. I appreciate, again, Vader, your time. Pedro, Superior Buds, you guys got anything else to say before we close it out tonight?
Take care, everyone. Cheers.
Cheers,
Look
guys.
down below for all the links. Have a good night. Smile.